Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and welcome to the 16th installment of Last Week Lolita News. As being off for about a month will usually have you miss a few things, let's all hurry and catch up with the first and only segment, Peace is Dead and the Lolita community killed it, so let's all rehash old news because it amuses me one-time special. Bonus points if the previous dribble made any sense to you, and without further ado, I give you the thing you waited several weeks for that may or may not have you calling for my head. At the top of the segment, Angelic Pretty released the world's first $1,000 toilet roll cover with the reveal of their brilliantly named Dressy Time Dress series. Rumors on whether or not an unsupervised toddler was primary to the naming process have yet to be confirmed, and the brand is remaining mum on whether or not their design concept could have been improved if only they hadn't used so much restraint. This could obviously benefit from at least 50 more layers of lace, and I'm honestly disappointed if my dresses don't violate the weight limits on elevators with the base layer alone. Returning to names that only make sense if your general grasp of the English language begins and ends with the babblings of a sugar-laden parakeet forced to listen to J-pop on loop, Angelic Pretty combined STEM leanings with their Japanese to English dictionary with the latest release of the Astro Regimen series. The dress sold out in a couple of colorways, and outside of a title surely inspired by a word of the day calendar set on spin cycle in the pit of Neil deGrasse Tyson's basement, the series boasts a jacket and tights that would surely make even the most jaded Magic School Bus fans proud. Sure, Miss Frizzle would spend half an hour correcting the use of constellations via a sudden interstellar trip during third period, no parental waivers would be signed, and half the class would drop dead mid-lesson due to the realities of traveling through the cold, unforgiving vacuum of space and nothing more than a school bus. But goddammit if you wouldn't graduate top of your class with a memory for astronomy only rivaled by the images of your classmates popping like overbloated toads in the midst of the vacuous reaches of the uncaring void. Meanwhile, Meta and Innocent World are too preoccupied with blowing the monarchy to manage anything more than a murmur, and experts are working on the exact critical mass of crowns you can plaster on a dress before the unwashed masses feel it's getting a bit repetitive. My money's on Infinity. Innocent World has made somewhat of a business out of the royal reach around, and while it could be a simple coincidence, the suspiciously familiar trend of imperfect teeth currently taking Japan by storm could be the result of copying a country that classifies all of dentistry under the file of sadomasochistic fetish. Metamorphose has also released photos of a series to be named Nostalgic Matryoshka Doll. I actually think it's pretty cute, and am now questioning my sanity as I consider the merits of a brand that previously pumped out such winners as Ronald McDonald melted in a tractor beam and furry prostitute Yips in Hell. It should also be mentioned that AP released some teaser photos of Prince to come, and I'm half considering buying the Blow Me Jesus debut just to cleanse me of the sin of liking the same brand responsible for whatever this is supposed to be. Moving on to news unconcerned with things that make me want to skip the LASIK in favor of slipping into the comforting muddled blur of the blind, Rufflechat reanimated in fine form last week after a certain party took it upon themselves to ride a zombified horse into the dead center of the community, jump off, and beat it like a grocery store piñata. The mishap began with one poster's attempt to solicit 100 girls into providing their PayPal addresses in order to convince infamous replica maker Ujia to produce a copy of Dolly Cat. It apparently didn't occur to her to complete the action by tossing a gallon of gasoline onto her head and lighting a match, and the community as a whole greeted the offer not unlike a pyromaniac confronted with tinder, a matchbook, and an unsupervised barrel of gasoline. Which is to say they killed it with fire, buried the remains, and proceeded to salt the earth for good measure. The burial proceeded to thread sudden deletion by Rufflechat mods, and sources say it could take the horse at least a week to claw it again on the tail end of some half-baked excuse for art theft that basically sums up to, but I want it really bad. The complex moral arguments of an under-disciplined toddler aside, we turn towards Last Week Lolita News' next special segment, in which I depict a complex topic to the best of my ability, you break out the word problematic in force, and Pole escapes its containment board with all the fury of your opium-addled uncle on a high of chainmail and social security checks sent straight to the RNC. Welcome to Can Black People Be Lolita? The answer is yes. Now that you can cut the level of disappointment with a knife, several people are considering mutiny, and I can expect to see several effigies of my likeness burned in public for making you wait the equivalent of eternity for a red herring. I'd like to turn your attention to something that doesn't really fit into a video title without stretching the bounds of public patience. We begin in the year 2015. The month is February, and just a few weeks before Valentine's Valentine's Day, the Lolita community is met with an image that inspires anything but affection. The image is presented by a Houston, Texas-based company known for specializing in Lolita wigs. The fact that this company is situated in the USA will come to pertinence later, and if you had the privilege to be a member of the online Lolita community, this is what you woke up to on February 2nd. This is not a joke. This line of wigs was called the Jezebel. The company responsible for it is Gothic Lolita Wigs. And in case you've been living in a post-racial society so long that it's rattled your brains, that is an image of a black person holding a bunch of watermelon wearing a wig named after a term used to characterize black women as being sexually promiscuous whores that couldn't possibly be sexually assaulted because they always wanted sex. Hey there, look at this puppy so you don't entertain thoughts of purging the entire human race. Better? Good! Now that you're properly distracted from the crushing weight of white guilt and colonialism that are married to living anywhere that took to manifest destiny like a valedictorian takes to antidepressants, I'd like to reiterate at this point that this is a USA-based company in Texas in the year 2015. You know, just in case you thought today was January 14th, 1963. Have another puppy! Now, some of you might be confused at this point. Not everyone lives in America. Some of you might have slept through the depressing parts of history class, and the rest of you might have been raised on a steady diet of Fox News with the racial awareness of Sarah Palin with her head stuffed firmly up a wild moose's ass. You might not be familiar with the caricature of a black person commonly depicted as being a fried chicken-loving, watermelon-eating grape soda drinker with jerry-curled hair and a vacant expression. You might also have the racial awareness of a colorblind baked potato. You, however, are not a company based in a state with a statistically significant black population in a country with a history of racism that could be politely described as the government-sanctioned investment in the capture, trade, and exploitation of a group of people based entirely on the level of melanin in their skin. Puppies, puppies, puppies! Did it work? No? Great! Now that 1,000 pointers are hovering over that big red X in the corner, I'd like to return to the most prominent question at hand. What the hell does this have to do with the Lolita community? Well, if you're black and into Lolita fashion, the answer is quite a bit. Because Gothic Lolita Wigs wasn't done yet. And just days before the PR fiasco that went over about as well as could be expected from people who thought hiring Coco Montrese was a good idea, the company had this to offer when questioned about why there weren't more dark-skinned models on their website. To which they responded that some of their models are actually tan, they just brighten their skin to give them a more doll-like appearance as part of their company image. Those of you not versed in dog whistle should know that brighten means lighten. The implication here is that darker skin isn't dolly, and Gothic Lolita Wigs' company image was apparently at odds with anyone who doesn't resemble the sinful remains of a proper cup of coffee post a metric fuck-ton of milk and sugar. My unsolicited judgment of your validity as a human being based only on your preference for caffeinated beverages aside, motherfucker, put that creamer down! The revelation of Gothic Lolita Wigs' racial preferences became somewhat of a talking point for a little while after. If by talking point you mean screaming fit, and a while after you mean still carries repercussions today that far outweigh the reputation for the shit quality of their wigs in general. No big deal really now that the Party City quality has been eclipsed by depressingly overt racism. Except I'm not done. As much as I'd like to tell you that the company as a whole dug itself into the center of the earth and came out with an understanding of color not represented by the spectrum between eggshell white and ecru after a thorough overcoat of brightening bleach, a company representative then had this to say in what might have been an apology if the desired effect was to poke the person you're apologizing to directly in the eye. Those of you without the patience to pause and read should know that the representative within said that black women will never buy a wig if they see it on a cute girl with frilly clothes. They tried to point fingers at Lock Shop to distract from their own wrongdoings, and finish with the line that they're really busy and have to get back to working on most important things. You know, like things unrelated to telling black women they're not dolly, couldn't possibly want or fit into their company image, and should really stop being so hysterical so that Gothic Lolita Wigs can get back to the most important things, like making sure that their models look like they live in a nuclear fallout shelter post the absolute obfuscation of the sun. Cybergoth is so 2008, and friends don't let friends lighten their skin based on Western beauty ideals buried in Anglo-ethnic normalcy brought into dominance via methods of exploitation and greed. Jesus Christ, have another puppy. Word on whether or not that particular representative was given a one-way bus ticket to stop talking have yet to be confirmed, but in the days following what shall be known as the watermelon incident, Gothic Lolita Wigs Wigs endeavored to release statements in a much more official capacity than the tactics commonly associated with the average Facebook flounce. The apology on their official Facebook page announced that the image was a collaboration between drag queen Coco Montrese and photographer Hosea Guzman Colon. They attempted to explain it by saying that it was based on a song by Beyonce in which drinking watermelon is mentioned all of one time with no accompanying imagery, and rounded off the entire affair with the assurance that they are a minority-owned company themselves. A few months down the line, and those signed up for the Gothic Lolita Wigs newsletter received this in their inbox. Those of you too heck to read should know that the owner, John Rieger, is a Chinese American. He finds it very upsetting to be called a racist or perceived as one, and finishes with the assurance that the celebrity makeup artist for all of their shoots is Mark Harvey. So they have a black friend. A very, very pretty black friend. Back to news unrelated to facial structure that makes diesel models look like they got hit by a Mack truck in comparison. The fact that the owner of Gothic Lolita Wigs is a Chinese American brings a special light to the issues facing black people in Lolita fashion. For while this newsletter was the final official wrap-up for the watermelon fiasco, there remained a burning question. How was it even possible in the first place? What does this have to do with Taobao's country of origin? And what does it really mean to be black in Lolita can all be found in part 2 of Last Week Lolita News' latest special segment. Because that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for watching Last Week Lolita News, and be sure to tune in next week for the only time that the following will actually be a serious indicator of upcoming content, when we tackle the tough questions like, is Japan racist? What does their lack of diversity mean for the black Lolita community? And why the hell did I resurrect this issue from the dead like some kind of masochistic ball of white guilt? Dear God help me, the mob is already at my door. Tell my family I find them tolerable after copious amounts of alcohol. Next time on Last Week Lolita News. This has been Tyler. You've been watching Scarfing Scarves, and I'll catch you next time. Hey there, thanks for watching the video precursor to the shredded remains of what little respectability I maintained. I'd like to send a massively deep thank you to my patrons whose support through this last month has been the sole dividing factor between continuing to work and crawling into a chicken suit to bay at the moon. And should you like to encourage the activity of a woman soon to be found on their neighbor's roof after a rough day, provide bail money for the ensuing arrest, and support the purchase of a new chicken suit when they take the old one in for evidence, then head over to patreon.com/lastweeklolita News. Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you next time on Last Week Lolita News.